Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Commissioner. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day for Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. The commissioner of basketball and the commissioner of baseball went to the World Congress of Sports this past week. And they didn't just go as participants, they went as speakers. And when the commissioners speak, people listen. They are the incarnation of E.F. Hutton. I'm fascinated with things that they talk about because it gives you insight into the direction of the leagues, the thoughts of the owners, possible minefields with the players. And every time they speak at something like the World Congress, it is with purpose, with intent, and with agenda. And that is not in any way pejorative. When you are asked to appear at a sports business journal conference like the World Congress of Sports, the reason why you do it is that having a good relationship with SBJ, Sports Business Journal, matters. There are all the lists of 40 under 40. There are all the awards for Organization of the Year or for Person of the Year or for Power Brokers of the Year. There's nothing like a magazine that has lists, whether it's the top 100 universities and the amount of money that is spent by universities to get on that list and to increase their standing on the list. When SBJ does something and you sponsor it, you go and you talk to it and you decide what talking points are important for this audience. But this audience are not the participants at the CAA World Congress of Sports, because that's something that we'll never go to. The audience that you're talking to as a commissioner is us, the fans, the media. Rob Manfred came up, and during his conversation, he covered a bunch of issues, the most important of which was an issue regarding the salary cap. The salary cap is a conversation that has been had not just on Nothing Personal, not just within meetings of owners, not just within the union and their meetings with players. Salary cap is probably the single most important conversation of any league, whether you have it, whether you don't. When you have the salary cap, the conversation is, what's the salary cap? How do you get around the salary cap? Would you do aprons above the cap? Is there dead cap, live cap, side cap, up cap, pop cap? When you don't have it, it's a conversation that you have two sides of a negotiating table. Major League Baseball is currently negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement, but they're not negotiating union against management. They're currently negotiating union with union and management with management. So when Commissioner Rob Manfred says that, and this is pretty much a quote, that the owners don't exactly know what they're going to do after 2026, that's not exactly true. That has been worked on since the end of the last lockout. The minute the new CBA is signed, the planning starts for the next CBA. You don't even get a weekend off if you're the deputy commissioner, Dan Hallam, and you're the chief negotiator. You are already working on the next deal. You are already going through with teams issues. You're trying to understand what the ramifications are of the CBA you already agreed to. You spend years doing that. Now that we are only 1.5 years away from the expiration of MLB's CBA, which expires in December of 2026, what's going on now is both a media approach and an internal approach. And what the commissioner has realized is that there is going to be a lockout. He is in the process of counting how many teams are going to be what we called internally in baseball hardliners. Hardliners are owners. Jerry Reinsdorf is a great example of a hardliner. He is someone who, during previous negotiations, had wanted to push for far better deals, pro management, anti player. A hardliner is someone who picks an issue. Generally, it's salary cap or luxury tax or something related to player compensation and says, I am not budging. I'm a one issue voter. I'm not budging except for that issue. We've already talked on this show about owners who have come out and said salary cap necessary. And we had it. We heard it from the Reds. We heard it from the Orioles. We heard it from the Rockies. That's 3 already. Don't forget the math. You're going to hear about it for the next year and a half from me. The math is 8. It's always 8. 8 owners out of 30 in Major League Baseball required to block any deal of any kind. You need 23-7 to pass a new CBA. 22-8 means it fails. So the commissioner came out at the World Congress and said, hey, I don't know where we're going to be after 2026, but I do know one thing, and that if there's ever going to be a salary cap, it means there's also going to be a salary floor. That's a concept we've talked about. Why mention that? Who's the audience? It's the owners. It's not the players. The players have always been against a salary cap because it is their view, the union's view, that you would be putting the salary cap at a number below several teams who see no reason to curb their spending. Mets, Dodgers, Yankees. Keep the payrolls up. Padres when they're being delusional. Why would you put an artificial cap? But the funny part is that what players do and what they should do under good union leadership is you look at total player comp as a percentage of total industry revenue. You could have the Dodgers going to $350 million in payroll, but if you've got enough Guardians, Royals, Orioles, Marlins, Rays, A's, if you have enough teams whose payroll is below what a salary floor could be, then maybe that would make up for the decrease at the very top. You see, the union is concerned about a decrease at the top because those are the teams who compete for the upper echelon of free agents, for the $40 million guys, the $50 million guys. But that is a very small percentage of the union. And as management, we don't focus on that percentage of the union. We are far more focused on the bulk of the union. And the bulk of the union consists of players who barely make it to arbitration, who are more focused on retirement benefits, on pension. They're more focused on minimum salary. They're not focused on how high the salary cap would be because they're not getting a $50 million contract ever. And so when you appeal to the mass of the union, what you're trying to do is put a divide in the union, or you're trying to get the union to focus on the issues that you want them to focus on. The thing about salary cap and salary floor is Major League Baseball does not yet have enough consensus within its own ranks of how that would work, because the teams below the salary floor, despite what everyone in the media says, especially a guy at ESPN who has no idea what he's talking about when discussing the Pittsburgh Pirates. The reality is that in order to get the Pirates salary up or the Marlins salary up, given the economics of those teams, it would require more revenue sharing. The teams at the top of the salary scale are reticent to give more revenue sharing and agree to a cap, because what would happen is it would be squeezing the disparity. And despite the commissioner telling you that people don't like the disparity between the top and the bottom payroll, the owners at the top very much like the disparity because they like the idea of not having to compete with all 29 other teams. which of course then informs you their anger when they give revenue sharing to a team that ends up beating them. Because in baseball, the correlation between top payroll and World Series rings, while it existed last year with the Dodgers Yankees, that is not something that is a guarantee. So when the commissioner talks about salary cap, salary floor, the reason why he's talking to owners is that for him, he needs to see where the owners are at both sides of the spectrum and see whether he can get to 23 before even proposing it to the players union, because you don't make proposals in a negotiation that you cannot sell to your owners. He then talked about expansion. I found this to be very interesting. He said that Sacramento sees itself as an expansion candidate, and rightfully so. The reason why you want Sacramento as an expansion candidate is that it is critical that everyone views Sacramento, where the Aths play, as a competitor for the West Coast expansion, because MLB expansion will come with a West Coast team and an East Coast team. And if the only West Coast possibility was Vegas, and Vegas is getting the A's, then you've got to look to Portland, which we just did a segment where Portland has a ballpark jock tax approved. They've got renderings, but you can't have one city competing. So you add Sacramento, then you get a second. Commissioner pointed out that ticket sales in Sacramento are up 66% compared to Oakland. When people use percentages as arguments, and I used to do this, and I was trying to trick you, and it was incredibly disrespectful, and I'm sorry for it, because when people are better at math or are able to use math in a way that can be misleading, it's not very nice. But if I have a season ticket base of 1,000 season ticket holders, and I get another 1,000 the next year, I get to tell you that I had a 100% increase in season tickets, which sounds amazing, except I only have 2,000 after that 100% increase, which totally stinks. To say that Sacramento is selling 66% more tickets, think about the math. Let's just do it for ourselves, just for fun, just because we're here. If Oakland averaged 9,000 people and Sacramento averaged 12,000 people, that would be an increase of 33%. Do we agree? You go from 9 to 12, you're up 3. 3 divided by 9, 33%. How would you get ticket sales up 66% compared to Oakland when the capacity in Sacramento, give me the number, Coca. I'm going to say the capacity with standing room is 14,000. I may be close to that. So if you are at 9,000 and you increase by 6,000, that's how you get an increase of 66%. You've gone from 9,000 to just above, 14 to 15,000. But that's not enough to be an expansion candidate. You have to be a city and forget the fact that it's just a capacity issue. So you can say to the commissioner of baseball, if we had a stadium of 30,000, then we would have drawn 30,000 because we sold out 15. Why wouldn't we sell out 30? But the whole thing in baseball is the difference between the 15s and the 30s. So Sacramento may be an expansion candidate, but not because of any attendance increase. In terms of Oakland and Sacramento and Vegas, the commissioner wants you to know that we are a go for Vegas. Sacramento is temporary. He also wants you to know that Tropicana Field is going to be done and ready to go in 2026. That was the most aspirational thing that the commissioner said at the CAA World Congress of Sports, because did you hear this one, Coca? Sorry, side note. The Tropicana, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Trop, and Hillsborough, I assume, they're selling pieces of the roof for like $25. Brilliant. Someone asked me on a DM at David P. Samson on X whether or not those were actual pieces of the roof. It is true when you buy a baseball card that is a piece of a glove or a piece of a jersey, you get a jersey and it gets cut into all these different pieces and then put into these things that are then sold. And then there's a counter like 2 of 250. So it feels exclusive. So you can charge more. So it is true. They're selling actual pieces of the roof. But it is not true that it's a guarantee that Trop will be ready to host baseball again in 2026. The reason why it's aspirational is the commissioner has no other place for Tampa to play right now because they can't stay at Steinbrenner Field. The Yankees won't have them. He doesn't want them moving to another city just for a year the way Oakland did to Sacramento. So he's praying to God that the Trop gets done. Whether it does or doesn't, we'll wait to see. So the commissioner of baseball gets done. Now it's time for Adam Silver to talk. Adam Silver, one of my favorite commissioners. He took over for David Stern and stepped in. He has overseen tremendous growth in a way much different than David Stern did. Has a much better relationship with the players than David Stern had. He's just a different personality in all senses of the word. He wanted to get a few things out there. Number one, he wanted to explain the situation with expansion. There's been a lot of talk going all the way back to LeBron and Shaq fighting over Vegas. Vegas seems to be a fait accompli when it comes to expansion. Adam Silver said at the CAA World Congress of Sports, he said, hey, Seattle, Vegas, and wait for it, Vancouver. Do you guys remember Vancouver, the Vancouver Grizzlies? Remember Bryant Reeves? Do you know the Vancouver Grizzlies lost their team to Memphis in 2000, 25 years ago? Now the NBA is saying that Vancouver is interested in reobtaining a franchise. Now, I grant you things can change over the course of 25 years, but to all of the public officials, and this is not me in any way humping for owners at all. This is just math. There is not a city that loses a team that doesn't want to get the team back. Seattle lost the Supersonics. And every time you get a team back, you spend more money to get it back than you would have had you just spent to keep it in the first place. You see, sports teams are no different than customers. Sports teams are a customer of the city in which they inhabit, just like a museum is or a business. When you relocate your business to a city or when you decide to keep your business in a city, that's what sports teams are. Customers. Do you know the expense of keeping a customer versus getting a new one? It's an easy equation. The approximate view that we had on Wall Street, and we did this because we understood the math of keeping customers and what it is to market to get customers. When you are on the investment banking side and you've got a company who works with you, that company is going to give you billings over the course of a relationship. They're going to do mergers and acquisitions. They're going to have monetization events. They're going to have various things that they will do with you if they are loyal to you and you are loyal to them. If you are out there in business development, you are pitching companies where there is a low likelihood of getting their business. The amount of money that is spent getting people to switch from Pepsi to Coke is much smaller than the amount of money spent getting people to keep drinking the Coke that they already drink. The third bucket of money is spent on getting people who have not yet tried soda to drink the Coke instead of the Pepsi. So when it comes to sports teams, when it comes to the amount of money you spend, when you have a team, you're supposed to spend to keep it. Because when you don't have one, look at what Portland's done. Look at what San Antonio's done. Look at what Montreal has done to get its Expos back. Compare the expense to what it would be to actually build a publicly financed stadium in one of those cities. In order for Vancouver to even be a candidate for expansion in the NBA, they're going to need to make sure they've got an up-to-date place to play. They're going to need to make sure they have local ownership, all the things that needed to be there in 2000. But the reason the team left is they didn't have the proper support. They didn't have the proper revenue. They couldn't compete. And if you think that the NBA or Major League Baseball is going to expand into Canada right now, it is not going to happen. There is so much uncertainty as it relates to the Canadian dollar. Just look at the issues NHL is having with all of its Canadian teams. Look at the issues with the Blue Jays, with the Raptors, the existing Canadian teams in baseball and basketball. When you've got a problem with the Canadian dollar and you've got political issues and visa issues that I grant you may only last until 2000 for 3 more years or 4 more years, there's just too much uncertainty. But again, the reason Commissioner Adam Silver has to mention Vancouver is it can't just be Seattle and Vegas. It will have a quashing impact on what the bids are and therefore what the fees are. Commissioner Silver spoke about one other thing that I just want to mention. He spoke about the RSN issue. I don't know how to cover it any more than we have here on Nothing Personal or on Sporting Class, except to tell you that if you don't have an understanding of the seriousness of the local broadcast issue for the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball, then I don't think the players or fans are fully understanding the impact it will have on industry revenue and therefore on payroll. The NBA signed a big national deal that goes into effect next season. We talked about it. It's the end of Inside the NBA on TNT. They'll be on ESPN. We talked about the $77 billion. We talked about the money that got allocated to the WNBA. We talked to you about what James Dolan is doing because he's so angry that his RSN is losing value because the NBA is getting more national than local. But what the NBA can hide from you, and what MLB will not even try to hide from you, no matter what national packages they're trying to negotiate, is the importance of local television revenue as a component of the revenue pie. They will never be the NFL. NBA won't, and MLB won't. They will never be in a position where the national TV revenue will be enough that local revenue won't matter at all. In the NFL, there is no local revenue. I mean, there's some broadcast revenue for radio, and it's barely a rounding error. But every game is part of the pot for national revenue in the NFL. There is no streaming service. There is no combination of streaming service. There is no bidder to take 162 games from 30 teams and make them all national games. What MLB is trying to do is to cut a national streaming deal. They're trying to license MLB.TV. They're trying to do several things to make it appear as though the national revenue will take over for the entirety of local revenue. But the fact is, there still needs to be the local revenue piece. The reason why Adam Silver thought to bring it up is that he wanted to make sure that everyone understood, and he was talking to players, fans, media, everybody, that the local broadcast issues in the NBA, we are having a problem because our young fans, he said, they're called the cord nevers. You know that word. I just learned it. I know cord cutter, didn't know cord never. Now I got it. He said and acknowledged it is not part of their lives to buy cable. Think about what that means. You can criticize Rob Manfred for saying that ESPN is a shrinking platform all you want. You can talk about the fact that there are shows on linear TV that are still watched by tens of millions of people. No problem. But when you talk about cable, that is now capital C, cable, in quotes. What capital C cable means is people's willingness to pay for things they don't care to pay for. That is what doesn't exist anymore. That's what a cord never means. And if you're not going to have that, then you're going to have RSNs on higher tiers of cable, on exclusive tiers for more money. And then you've got the fights that happen with the owners who don't want their RSNs. They don't want their teams on the higher level because they're not going to get paid as much money because not as many people will do it. It all fits together. It all makes sense. Why do you think yesterday, Coca, that the Nationals and Orioles announced that they're starting their own direct-to-consumer. Why do you think Bob Iger, the chairman of Disney, came out with Jimmy Pitaro at the same World Congress and said, we are very excited about this new direct-to-consumer product that we're launching? They said it's not being called Flagship, by the way, which was a horrible name. Of course not. I don't think it'll be called Venue either, but it'll be called something. Why do you think that there is that level of excitement and need to do direct-to-consumer? That's what the higher tiers are of cable. That is the iteration. That is on the path. The red brick road for 869. The yellow brick road, I conflated that with red tapping shoes. The yellow brick road toward individualized decisions on where your money is spent and what content you are going to get. That road starts at the back with full cable, basic, and it ends with a direct-to-consumer where you pay $19.99 a month. The Nationals and Orioles were two of the last three teams left without a direct-to-consumer this year in baseball. Only the Astros now are left. 29 teams are telling you, you want us, you can have us, you pay for just us. And then they wake up and realize, my God, there aren't nearly the tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who are paying to watch us, whether they watch us or not. Now we're counting it in 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people increments. The math doesn't come close. Get out your phones right now if you're watching the show or listening to the show. Just for me, go to the calculator app and just say you get 40,000 people, which you're not going to get, and just say you get them all to buy your season for $150, which isn't going to happen, but just say you do. Do you know what that equals? Coca, do you got that? Any idea? Yeah. It's not 60 million. Spoiler alert, too many zeros. We've got a real issue with the broadcast revenue in these leagues, and you have to count on people like Noah Garden and Rob Manfred to figure out how to get more money to owners in order to make it right. Because in a league where there is no tie of payroll to revenue, you just want as much revenue as you can get. But in the NBA, Adam Silver, full panic. Because the players are going to start realizing that the increase in the salary cap only comes with an increase in revenue because the salary cap is tied to industry revenue. This story of RSNs, we're not even close to done. Not even close. The last thing on Adam Silver. I love new ideas. I was a big fan, if not the person who had the golden at bat. Love that. Sorry, Stu Gatz, it wasn't you. Adam Silver proposed something that he did in the media during one of his media avails about 10-minute quarters. Remember that one? Because that's the international basketball way. It's sort of like wondering why college basketball still does 20-minute halves. Why not do 12-minute quarters? But anyway, it is apparent that the players are not interested in 10-minute quarters. Very often what a commissioner does is they float ideas of rule changes they want to make, and they're floating them in public like trial balloons. We do this with all sorts of PR things that we're going to do. You float it to see what the reaction is, to see if it flies or if it flops, and then you decide whether you're going to implement it. Well, The Athletic did a survey, an anonymous survey of NBA players, and over 78% of them said 10-minute quarters, forget about it. No interest. They want 12-minute quarters. Why? It's the same reason we wouldn't get players to agree to 7-inning games. It's the same reason we wouldn't get players to agree to 154 games if it came with a concomitant decrease in their salary. Because the view is that if you lose at-bats, if you lose possessions in basketball, you lose shot attempts, you lose opportunities to get rebounds, assists, points, the things that are used to get yourself paid, then what's going to happen is there's going to be an extra adjustment that will be to the detriment of you and your ability to make money, not to the benefit. Because if it's no longer possible, think about this. One more thing, Coca, before we go to break. Think about what's happened in baseball. Starting pitchers no longer throwing 200 innings. It's not because they don't have the opportunity to throw 200 innings. It's because they can't throw 200 innings. If they didn't have the opportunity because those innings did not exist, the baseball players would be angry because their view is no one's going to pay us as though we could pitch 200 innings because we literally cannot. In the NBA, if you cannot, because of time, score 35 points a game, the thought was, how will you get paid as though you are? How will you be able to differentiate yourself at the top of the market if you have condensed the band of greatness to average? And the way you increase the band is by increasing the opportunity. The way you increase the opportunity is by having the opportunity, having the 48 minutes, having the 9 innings, having the 162 games. So we're not going to see any 10-minute quarters. Sorry. All right. When we take a break, we're going to take a break. I want to talk about what happened last night in the NBA playoffs. Something happened with the Lakers and the T-Wolves I want to discuss, and the Grizzlies and the Thunder. But when we're done with the break, I'm going to review a movie I watched 2 nights ago, a 2-part series. We'll do it right after this. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. Thank you for all of the people subscribing on YouTube. Please keep going. Just come and hit subscribe. Tell your friends to hit subscribe. Thank you for paying attention to us, audio, video, wherever you find us, DraftKings Network. Believe me, Coke and I don't take you for granted. I watched a 3-hour movie cut into 2 1.5-hour pieces. It's on Apple TV Plus, and it's called Number One on the Call Sheet. Number One on the Call Sheet is produced by Jamie Foxx, and it is 2 1.5-hour episodes. One is on Black men on film. One is on Black women on film. And it is interviews with Black movie stars. It starts with male, episode 1, and then female, episode 2. I want to spend 2 minutes talking about this because I had this unbelievable epiphany. And I'm watching, and it's just very well done. And the women who were interviewed, whether it's Whoopi Goldberg, obviously an Oscar-winning actress, Halle Berry, Angela Bassett, they're talking about their careers. Tessa Thompson. They're talking about whether or not they ever were able to see people who looked like them perform, whether or not the Academy Awards were ever open to anyone who looked like them. They talked about the fact that there had been no Black actress to ever win Best Actress until Halle Berry. And she thought when she won for Monsters Ball that it would open up a huge number of opportunities for Black actresses. And those opportunities did not come. Dwayne Wade's wife, Gabrielle Union, who is famous and phenomenal in her own right, is interviewed and talking about her movies and how she got opportunities and what kind of movies they were. There was Tiffany Haddish talking about makeup and how they would go to a makeup room and there'd be no people of color doing makeup. They wouldn't know how to do her makeup. They wouldn't know how to do her hair. Alfred Woodward was talking from Grand Canyon, my favorite movie. You've heard of Alfred Woodward, talking about what it is to be an older Black actress, though she's hardly old. Octavia Spencer. They went one at a time, back and forth in a really well edited way, where the point of it was to show you that not everyone understands, because we associate Hollywood with the elite. We associate it with left and liberal. We associate it with people who are all rich and famous. It's just not the truth. It's not the truth for Black actresses or Black actors or white actresses or white actors. The thing that was not talked about enough during this Number One on the Call Sheet, which is an expression for a call sheet, they list the people in order of how, not their importance, but how significant they are in that day's filming, how many lines they have, how much screen time. The fact is that it's a lot like a sport. The world of acting is like professional baseball. The number of people who make the money, regardless of color, is tiny. The amount of people toiling in the minor leagues who never even make it to the minor leagues, but have a dream to make it in the minor leagues and may even get one at bat, Adam Greenberg, that's the majority. That's the majority of the union, whether it's the MLB Players Union or whether it's SAG-AFTRA. And one thing that we tend to forget when we put color into the discussion, or when we put rage or race or fairness, is that the ability to be successful, it used to be starting point, you had to be white. Now, there are black actors and actresses, and on the men's side, they talked about Will Smith. He was there talking about his global success, and Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, and Jamie Foxx. These are teeny tiny percentages, not representative. And even they felt they weren't properly represented and didn't have a chance to, which just shows you what it means to be at the very bottom, where you look up and say, I guess I want to be you, and I see that you can do it because you look like I look, but yet the opportunities, they still don't exist. The ability to succeed is that difficult to achieve. Try to watch that movie. It's called Number One on the Call Sheet. It'll get you thinking. I told you yesterday it was important because it was our pick of the day. It was important that the T-Wolves came out and did not feel satisfied with a one-game lead in LA. You got to go get the second game. The Minnesota Timberwolves did not come out like that. The Minnesota Timberwolves lost to the Lakers, and it is a missed opportunity. The Timberwolves, I could argue, are the better team. I could argue they have a good chance to win this series for sure. But you've got to come out with that fire, and I'm not putting any blame on anyone other than to tell you that it is the most common thing. It's why it's so hard to repeat as champions. The letdown that happens when you win a game one on the road is significant because you breathe. You say to yourself, I don't need game two. It would just be gravy, which is why you're supposed to tell your players, stop thinking of it that way. But the problem is you can meet your players all you want. When you win a World Series, you can have a meeting the next spring training and say, let's work harder this year. Let's be the team that repeats because no one ever repeats. Let's do it. You got to have a special player in order to make that happen, like a Michael Jordan. You got to find a way to have someone's will to win, like a Kobe Bryant. You have to have someone's will to win that is so significant that it overcomes the general malaise. And what I saw last night was malaise, and I didn't like it. Now, the Oklahoma City Thunder don't have that malaise. They haven't won a championship. John Morant came out after the Grizzlies lost by 51 in game one and said, you'll never see us play that badly again until game two. Now, it is true that the Thunder didn't win by 51, but it was a complete blowout. They're not even, the Grizzlies aren't worthy of being on the floor with the Thunder, and the Thunder are not taking it for granted. They're going to sweep them, of course, but they're not taking it for granted because the Thunder don't have a ring yet. They're still in that phase of, oh my God, someone else has that brass ring that I want to get. And you can see the hunger. There is a huge difference there with who the Thunder are, and you're going to be watching them through June, so get ready. I want to get to my nothing personal pick of the day now, if that's okay, Coca. We had the Timberwolves plus 5.5 over the Lakers, and we lost. And there was an announcement yesterday that Anthony Edwards, the star of the Timberwolves, got fined again. He had an obscene gesture to a fan, and he got fined $50K. And it was pointed out in a tweet by Front Office Sports and anyone else who can do math that Anthony Edwards has now paid $370,000 in fines this season, the most in the NBA. Now, to 69% of the people listening to this, you will say $370,000. That's absurd. I want to do a little math for you. If you are making $100,000, if I find you $877, would your way of life change? Would your behavior change? Would it teach you a lesson? Because that's what Anthony Edwards got fined. His pay this year is $42.176 million. He got fined $370,000. He got fined on November 15th, December 6th, December 21st, December 27th, January 11th, February 27th, April 19th. Every Mutton Gedunishtik, the guy's getting fined, and it all adds up to a total of $877 if you were making 100 grand. Now, the argument could be made $877 to a 100 grand person is way bigger and more important and problematic and behavior changing than 370 grand is to 42 million. And I would tell you, it actually is all relative. And what I would tell you is that if you're trying to change behavior, and we talked about this with John Morant, we talk about this with players all the time where the fines are a joke. MLB, the guy had so many players just give me 5 $100 bills and say, see ya. They don't care. You've got to make it hurt. If you're making 100 grand and you're told that you're going to be fined $20,000 if you do something, you can bet your sweet bippy you're not going to do it. You've got a guy making $42 million. Tell him you're going to fine him $15 million. Guess who won't be making obscene gestures or criticizing officials anymore? Now, why is it that the NBA union doesn't allow that to happen? Because they're represented by a union and they know players are going to be players. That's not an excuse to me. If we want to change behavior, we've got to have deterrence put in place. Deterrence, by definition, are those things that you picture in your mind. I won't do that because I don't want my punishment to be this. My punishment is I lost a pick of the day and I'm angry about it. And what's with Patrick Corbin? The A's beat the Rangers. Corbin was decent again. Is this really possible? Do we have to cancel Corbin Day? There's so much canceling going on. I'm not doing it. I'll take the 0-2 and go to 43 and 44. I am not canceling Corbin Day. But we're below 500 again. So that's why we're making 2 picks today. I have a baseball game if you want to watch it, and you're not going to believe who I'm picking here. We are picking an underdog. We're picking the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they don't win. We're picking them over the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who have had an above-average season so far, but it's early. Why am I doing it? Because Andrew Heaney is pitching for the Pirates, and he's an underdog of plus 130. Andrew Heaney's going to give you 6 innings tonight, and he's going to give up a run. That's it. I love this. And if you're going to watch basketball, you're going to have to stay up late. The Warriors won game 1 on the road. You have to believe the Warriors won it. They're going to get greedy. You have to believe that they want to get game 2, don't you? Somehow it's the Rockets -3 over the Warriors. The Rockets are not going to lose 2 games at home to the Warriors. The Rockets are not the Memphis Grizzlies. The Rockets, while you may not be able to name any of their teams, you could name their coach. By the way, the coach's ex, Nia Long, is in the movie that we reviewed today. Another great actress. We're taking the Rockets -3. The NFL draft is tomorrow. Get ready. 3 days of excitement. I want to do that better, Coca. 24, 48, 69. The NFL draft is tomorrow. We've been waiting 361 days since the last NFL draft. And you know what's going to happen on Saturday when this draft is over. We're going to start talking about next year's draft. Let's get some mock drafts going. Let's get some more stories about Sanders and whether he's going to be a top pick or not a top pick. Let's figure out if the Browns or Giants are trading down because they've got the number 2 and 3 pick. Let's figure out who's going to make trades and who's not. Let's figure out which team wins the draft and loses the draft. We have 7 rounds of heaven. I'm in. Draft is a great way to acquire players. It gives opportunities for owners to meet the media, which I like. It gives opportunities for GMs to differentiate themselves by finding, what's the expression? Needles in a haystack. I don't know if that's the expression. Finding a straw of gold. I am mixing metaphors like it's nobody's business. Jerry Jones met the media yesterday. He had a news conference pre-draft. Remember, he's the owner and the GM, which saves a whole lot of meetings. And he said that he's working on, quote, pretty substantive trades. I love you, J squared. What's a substantive trade? Is a substantive trade bulky? Is it like 5 players? Is it like the Herschel Walker trade? Or is it a trade with an important piece that you're going to acquire or trade? Is it the player who's substantive, the number of players? Is it the number of trades? Is it the money involved? I don't really know. I've never used that adjective before with all the trades I've done. Substantive. He then talked about Micah Parsons. His son, Stephen Jones, runs the team. And Stephen Jones had a quote about the still unsigned Micah Parsons. And in case you're not a business person, which I think you are because you're paying attention to nothing personal, here's a quote. Why Micah Parsons isn't signed. Get ready. Right now, there's a difference in what we feel like is the right number and what he feels like is the right number. Just breathe. Take it in. Take in the brilliance of that sentence. The reason why a deal doesn't get done is because there's a difference of opinion in the value of the underlying asset. NSS, baby. Obviously. Give me something better. Talk to me, Stephen Jones, about why we thought a deal was already done with Micah and nothing's been announced. Talk to me about the fact that you said you're definitely signing him, but still you haven't. But then you continue by saying the assumption is that Micah is going to get something done. A deal's going to get done. We've heard it before. Micah knows or should know how important his work is around here, how important his being around here working is to leadership. This is Micah, who appeared at the offseason workouts. He's being a good teammate, a good player. It's what they do. But I'm just curious if Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones have any belief at all that Micah is going to sign for a number that is not his quote unquote right number. How do you know in a negotiation when you have to give? How do you know when to be Steve Cohen and just say to Juan Soto, write the number? How do you know when to be David Samson when you say to Giancarlo Stanton, just write the number? It's only when you're completely desperate. It's only when you have no leverage. Do the Cowboys have leverage over Micah? If you had to decide for yourself, can the Cowboys exist without him? Can they let him go? What is it about his presence on the Cowboys that has proven to be the difference in them being successful or not in the postseason, helping them back to a conference championship? I'm not yucking on Micah. What I'm yucking on is the need that owners have to bring their own players back, whether it is Dak Prescott, the players who Jerry Jones has signed, he kept his. When you win a Super Bowl, you keep, and then you put yourself in a hole for 5 years after. When you have max players in the NBA who have a little success, you sign them all, and then you realize that now you don't have a team that can win again. What is it that makes the owners feel that that is the right plan? It's all fear-based. It is all them thinking with thin skin that the fans and the media, if you let one of your players go or you don't give the extension to Micah Parsons or you lose him in free agency, that there will be some sort of rot of the bond between the fan and the team. To which my answer always was, the only thing that rots the relationship between the fan and the team is when you don't win. Now, of course, there are people who said, oh, in Florida, you had fire sales with Wayne Huizenga, John Henry, Jeffrey Lurie. There were fire sales galore. You were even a part of one, David. Yeah, that's true. But it's not like we were breaking up the 27 Yankees. We were breaking up teams that didn't win 80 games. What would be the problem with Jerry Jones breaking up the Dallas Cowboys? What success have the Cowboys had this century with the players he has? It would be a far better move by the GM of the Cowboys to walk into the owner's office and to say, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to give in to the demands of our own player. We are going to work to put a team together that has a chance to get a different result. Because all you do when you sign your own player back is you get that player back. You just get him back for way more money. So what makes more sense is to make those substantive trades. Because substantive trades that we're going to call important trades, we're going to call trades that actually can make a difference in the performance of the team versus bringing your own players back. That must be what Jerry's talking about. So I'm going to give you a wait to see. When we tell you something's going to happen, if it does, great. If it doesn't, fine. The Cowboys are going to make a trade before the end of the draft on Monday. They're going to find a way. Then, that's the whole wait to see, by the way, Coca, that the Cowboys will make a trade before Monday. So on Tuesday's show, we can revisit this wait to see. The question is, when the trade is done, will Jerry Jones look into the camera and say, as owner or GM, that was a substantive trade? This will be the difference in our ability to win games. The draft we just had, the substantive trades we just made. We are now a team to be reckoned with in the NFC East. That's going to be the message. Is it going to be true? Well, I don't think so. But what he could do is just look right at you after the draft and say, hey, bye, Micah. It's just business. We'll see you tomorrow. This is nothing personal.